"Sir, the primitive just drop-kicked General Corps through a food truck," reported a shaken alien scout, ducking as a microwave exploded behind him. The war room aboard the flagship Dominion Fong descended into silence. War Chief Rozak the Ruthless leaned forward in his throne of molten steel and crushed bones, glaring at the screen as static cleared to reveal a battered human in a mismatched, rust-covered mech suit lighting a cigarette off a burst power conduit. The human looked directly into the camera, cracked a grin, and said, "This your king?" before slamming a junkyard wrench into the lens. Somewhere, a galactic AI short-circuited trying to calculate what just happened. 12 hours earlier, Earth had been categorized by the Galactic Dominion as a Zeta 9 primitive zone. In alien terms, that was a polite way of saying, not worth the laser charge to conquer. Rozak, commanding the most feared armada in 7 galaxies, decided to annex Earth as a training exercise for his board generals. The plan was to land, strut, and subdue a few tribal leaders, whatever passed for government on this mudball, and claim another territory without even unsheathing his plasma axe. The mission briefing took less than 3 minutes, during which most of the alien officers were scrolling through conquest memes. Earth was a joke. Until it wasn't. Down on the edge of the Nevada desert, Juggernaut Maddox was elbow-deep in the guts of a repurposed military exo-chassis, swearing at a stubborn bolt like it had insulted his mama. His junkyard was a glorious mess, rusted tanks converted into barbecue pits, missile shells used as flower pots, and a garage held together by hope and duct tape. A battered TV buzzed with static before switching to an emergency broadcast, "Alien fleet inbound." World leaders panicking. Jack squinted at the screen, took a swig from his dented thermos, and muttered, "Well, guess retirement's over." Jack hadn't always been a grease-stained hermit surrounded by cats and parts that should be in museums. He'd been the product of Earth's last big military gamble, a secret initiative called Project Juggernaut. The goal: build a human capable of fighting off planetary invasion solo. It failed spectacularly when funding was cut after the higher-ups realized giving one man the authority to punch satellites out of orbit might be legally problematic. Jack had been burned, discarded, and quietly disappeared to avoid political fallout. Now, the program was a myth, a joke told in drunken defense briefings. But Jack didn't forget. As the alien drop pods lit up the sky like angry fireworks, Jack finished welding the last panel to his suit. It was ugly, metal stolen from decommissioned tanks, an old amusement park ride, and parts scavenged from a defunct deep-sea sub. But it worked. The heads-up display flickered to life, showing a boot-up sequence written half in military code and half in pirate software. Jack cracked his knuckles. The world might have forgotten him, but he was about to make a comeback louder than a rocket-powered chainsaw. The war chiefs made their entrance in Arizona, choosing a vast, flat plain they assumed was Earth's central command. It was actually a stretch of desert used for regional barbecue competitions and monster truck rallies. Rozak stepped out in full ceremonial armor, flanked by towering generals with weapons designed to slice mountains in half. They were met with dust, crows, and a single paper sign that read, "You ain't from around here, are ya?" Then came the tremor. At first, the aliens mistook it for seismic activity. Then they saw it, a lumbering metal monstrosity stomping over the ridge, trailing smoke and the faint sound of Lynyrd Skynyrd. The mech was ridiculous by galactic standards, asymmetrical, partially exposed, and painted with a cartoon chicken holding dynamite. But inside it, Jack was grinning like a man who'd just been told open season on Warlords was legal. Rozak laughed. A full, belly-deep laugh that made his lieutenants uneasy. "One human?" he scoffed. "A ceremonial defender. Let's dispatch him with the training unit." They sent General Corps first, an 8-foot-tall alien juggernaut with a reputation for tearing tanks in half with his mandibles. Jack didn't even let him finish his war speech. The Second Corps opened his mouth. Jack launched a car door like a discus into his face, followed by a rocket-assisted leap that ended with Corps embedded in a taco truck half a mile away. The ensuing explosion covered everything in salsa. Back on the Dominion Fong, silence. Then the terrified scout's voice. "Sir, the primitive, he just suplexed the crusher." through a vending machine. Razak's face darkened. Send the next one. They sent it to the dissector, master of pain-based tactics, who was immediately zapped by a rigged toaster Jack had mounted to his shoulder. As the tool flailed around with 120 volts surging through his tentacles, Jack shouted, "Bet you didn't see that in your advanced battle simulation." The broadcast spread fast. News outlets picked it up. Social media turned Jack into a legend. Primitive power. The memes screamed. A teenager somewhere edited a video of Jack dropkicking aliens to the tune of dubstep and posted it with the caption, "Earth sends its regards." Meanwhile, the UN tried to activate their own defense initiative, codenamed Protocol 404. It was supposed to alert sleeper agents and rally Earth's hidden defenses. But no one could find the files. Turns out, they were stored on a government laptop currently being used as a drink coaster by an intern. The global defense meeting devolved into chaos. One general shouted, "Where's the Juggernaut?" To which another replied, "We disavowed him, remember?" Jack was too busy duct taping a busted panel mid-battle to care. At one point, a camera drone caught him walking slowly through the dust, backlit by fire and chaos, dragging a war axe he'd ripped from one of the generals. He passed by the smashed remains of a drone tank, reached down, and plucked a can of soda from the wreckage. He cracked it open, took a sip, and kept walking. He wasn't fighting for Earth. He wasn't fighting for redemption. He was fighting because someone called his home primitive, and that was just about the dumbest last mistake an alien could make. And high above, in the command deck of the Dominion farm, Razak watched the footage loop. His voice dropped to a low growl. "Bring the hive engine online. This is not a training exercise anymore. Earth had just become a battlefield. And the Juggernaut was just getting warmed up." The aftermath of General Corps' airborne salsa bath and a Toulouse toaster-induced seizure left the war chiefs in a state of confused silence. The kind of silence that meant two things in the galactic military hierarchy: either you had accidentally blown up your superior's transport again, or you were witnessing something too dumb to survive, but somehow it did. Razak paced the command deck of the Dominion Fong, one clawed hand dragging across the console, leaving long, angry scratches. His lieutenants stood motionless, afraid to speak. The human wasn't just resisting. He was humiliating them, with garbage tech and homemade weaponry no less. It wasn't just a tactical failure. It was a cultural insult. And in the eyes of the Dominion, that was unforgivable. Back on Earth, Jack Maddox climbed out of his mech suit, which had begun hissing from an overworked coolant system and smelled suspiciously like burning chicken. He stripped off his helmet and wiped the sweat from his face with an old sock, then took a seat on a crate labeled, "Do not sit," and opened a cold beer. Around him lay the wreckage of two alien generals, a half-melted food truck, and a news drone broadcasting his image live to every continent. Someone had hacked the feed to add a glowing crown above his head and a caption that read, "Earth's Last Hope, sponsored by duct tape." Jack raised his drink to the drone and said, "Hope you're getting my good side." At that moment, the Galactic Dominion sent their third specialist, Zarnak, a culinary officer turned general due to an unfortunate paperwork mix-up. Razak, in a moment of pure desperation and petty pride, barked, "If we're being fed to this planet, we might as well have a chef serve it." Zarnak was hurled to the surface in a single-use drop pod, still wearing his apron, clutching a cleaver, and screaming about sous vide temperatures. He landed in a pile of tires and was immediately kidnapped by a group of desert survivalists who thought he was a mutated raccoon. Zarnak's status remained unknown for the next 72 hours. One of the survivalists later claimed he made a mean gumbo. While the war chiefs scrambled to recover their egos, Earth's media began spinning Jack into a legend. News anchors debated his identity. Conspiracy theorists dragged out old files on Project Juggernaut. Kids in Brazil were building cardboard mechs and pretending to stomp aliens. Someone leaked Jack's image to a meme subreddit, and within minutes, the internet crowned him Sir Punch-a-Lot. One particularly viral clip featured Jack elbow-dropping a toll with a freeze frame just as he shouted, "This is for the DMV." Every adult on Earth related deeply. The attention didn't go unnoticed. Deep in an abandoned Cold War bunker, a security terminal flickered to life for the first time in 2 decades. Somewhere in orbit, a satellite pinged a forgotten network node buried beneath the Mojave. Lines of ancient code ran through systems nobody remembered existed. And finally, inside Jack's mech, a red light blinked to life on the control panel. A message appeared in glitchy green text. Protocol 808 activated. Jack stared at the screen. His brow furrowed as old instincts kicked in. The Juggernaut program was dead. Shut down. Burned from the records, scattered to the wind, forgotten like so many failed government projects. Protocol 808 wasn't supposed to exist. And yet there it was, blinking at him like a ghost. The message contained coordinates. A location buried under the Rockies. No explanation. Just a symbol he hadn't seen in years, a clenched fist surrounded by 13 stars. Before Jack could decide what to do, a familiar whirring sound returned, another drop pod, this time larger. It landed with a seismic thud. The doors hissed open to reveal a unit of elite Dominion enforcers in full plasma armor. Jack cracked his neck, tossed aside his empty beer can, and sighed. Didn't even let me finish lunch. The ensuing battle wasn't a fight. It was a demolition derby with extra fire. Jack used one enforcer as a hammer to beat the others. He ejected a shoulder panel that launched a rusted lawnmower blade into a plasma rifle, causing it to explode and coat everything in neon sludge. At one point, he launched himself into the air using an old gas line, flipped, and came down fists first onto the enforcer commander's head, flattening him like a soda can. It was so absurdly violent that one of the Dominion ships watching from orbit spontaneously developed PTSD and ejected its crew. Back in orbit, Razak realized brute force wasn't going to work. He needed strategy. He needed control. And for that, he needed Earth's defenses offline. So, he struck a deal with the one person on Earth still high enough in rank, dumb enough in morals, and desperate enough for relevance to betray the planet, General Blaine. A former military golden boy turned bureaucratic parasite, Blaine had long resented the fact that his career had been overshadowed by the Juggernaut project. When Razak offered him power in the new Dominion-controlled regime, he took the deal without hesitation. His only condition was personal immunity and a seat at the New World Order table. Jack, meanwhile, followed the coordinates from the message, reluctantly making his way to the old Juggernaut facility buried under miles of rock. The journey took him through abandoned train tunnels, secret elevators, and a hallway filled with malfunctioning animatronic mascots from a defunct military theme park. When he finally reached the control center, he found something that chilled even him. Backup Juggernaut units. Still in stasis. Still functional. And worst of all, still programmed to obey any high-ranking military official. Blaine activated them remotely. One by one, the lights in the bunker flickered on. Metallic forms began to move. Jack looked around and realized he wasn't alone anymore. The Juggernauts, his old brothers in arms, or what was left of them, were now being rebooted under Dominion command. As the metal giants rose, Blaine's face appeared on a cracked monitor, smug and satisfied. You were always the wild card, Maddox. Too unpredictable. Too dangerous. But now you're just obsolete. Jack clenched his fists. You're siding with the space lizards? They bring order, Blaine replied. You bring chaos. And Earth. Earth needs order. Outside, the skies began to darken. The hive engine had been activated, an enormous Dominion war construct that operated by manipulating planetary frequencies and draining resistance through fear. Lightning danced across the sky in unnatural patterns. People began reporting nightmares, visions, unexplained emotional breakdowns. In malls across America, people broke into spontaneous existential monologues while standing in line at pretzel stands. Jack looked up, expression hardening. This wasn't about personal redemption anymore. It wasn't about old programs or new memes. Earth was under a full-scale psychological and physical assault. The Dominion didn't just want to conquer, they wanted to shatter. But they had underestimated one thing. Earth didn't fight fair. and Jack Maddox had just decided to bring the whole fight to their doorstep. The hive engine loomed above the earth like a mechanical god, spinning slowly in the sky, its limbs unfolding like the petals of some awful flower. Entire cities looked up at it, and felt a quiet sense of wrongness settle over them, as if someone had dimmed the sun and turned up the static of reality itself. Beneath its influence, the world began to unravel, not in explosions or fire, but in breakdowns. People stopped showing up to work, not out of rebellion but confusion. Parents forgot their children's names. Pilots landed planes in the wrong countries. In one small town, an entire neighborhood began quoting Shakespeare in synchronized horror. Whatever the hive engine was doing, it was working. Fear wasn't just an emotion anymore. It was a weapon. Far from the growing panic, deep underground in the Juggernaut facility, Jack stood between the past and the future. All around him, the dormant units were powering up, eyes glowing with artificial purpose. The cold, efficient logic of Blaine's betrayal echoed through the bunker as his voice returned over the speakers. He didn't gloat. He didn't need to. The moment had been crafted perfectly. Jack alone, surrounded by former allies turned into Dominion-controlled shells, all while Earth slowly buckled above. Blaine didn't want Jack destroyed quickly. He wanted him outlasted, overwritten, forgotten. Jack did what he always did in impossible situations. He stalled. He talked to them, not the command center or Blaine, but the Juggernauts. He walked between them, hands raised, speaking to ghosts inside machines. These were the men and women who had trained with him, laughed with him, bled with him. He called out names. Remembered nicknames. Shared stories that weren't part of any mission log. He didn't try to break the code. He tried to break through it. For a moment, just a sliver of hesitation ran through the lead unit's posture. And then Blaine screamed through the speakers. "Execute the kill protocol!" Everything exploded into chaos. Jack leapt back just as a metal fist slammed into the floor where he'd stood. He dodged, weaved, slid across concrete, every move fueled by memory and instinct. One by one, the Juggernauts attacked, not all at once, but in brutal, calculated waves. These weren't mindless machines. They were Jack's equal, multiplied. But he wasn't trying to win. He was trying to reach them. In every counterattack, he struck with precision, disabling instead of destroying. He crushed power cores without hitting the central processors. He severed neural links without crushing their skulls. Each time he spared one, he whispered something only they would remember, some inside joke from training, a song lyric, a call sign. Slowly, the hesitation grew. And then one of them stopped mid-swing. A ripple of resistance moved through the room. One Juggernaut turned to face another, then back to Jack. The glow in its eyes flickered. For the first time, Jack saw recognition. Blaine screamed something incomprehensible, but his voice was now drowned out by something far louder. Music. Coming from Jack's suit. His systems had synced with a nearby military archive still somehow operational, and one song had been tagged as the Juggernaut program's motivational override. It blasted out of his mech speakers with all the clarity of a redneck garage concert freebird. The hive engine above Earth suddenly picked up interference. Meanwhile, Razak, now seated in the Dominion's orbital throne chamber, watched the chaos unfold with fury boiling under his scaled skin. He'd come expecting a species too weak to matter, and instead he was dealing with memes, resistance, and now what appeared to be a psychological counterattack involving Southern rock and emotional manipulation. This wasn't war. It was nonsense. And worse, it was working. In retaliation, he launched the hive's next phase, environmental destabilization. Across the globe, freak storms formed with unnatural speed. Lightning shot sideways. Ice formed in tropical zones. Animals began behaving like they were possessed. Cats herded people into bomb shelters, squirrels began hoarding electronics, and in one zoo, a gorilla named Milo began writing escape plans on the walls in chalk. The hive wasn't just war, it was rewriting the rules of the planet. That's when Earth did the unthinkable. It fought back. Not with governments. Not with armies. With lunatics. Misfits. DIY rebels. The message had spread. Jack Maddox wasn't the only one who could fight dirty. In garages, backyards, and abandoned theme parks, people began building mechs powered by car batteries, drones assembled from children's toys, a tank made from school buses, reinforced with riot shields and driven by a retired chemistry teacher named Barb. The resistance wasn't sleek or efficient. It was loud, disorganized, and cobbled together with faith and spite. Jack emerged from the bunker, bruised, bleeding, but alive, flanked by juggernauts who had broken free of control. They looked ridiculous, patched up with parts from old vending machines, wrapped in flag capes, one of them wearing a traffic cone as a helmet. But they were ready. They didn't wait for orders. They launched a counterassault on the hive engine. Blaine, watching from the Dominion command relay, panicked. His carefully crafted betrayal was falling apart. He tried to regain control of the juggernauts, but found the command lines scrambled. One by one, the resistance broke into the Dominion's ground relays, rerouting controls to people. Civilians. One remote controlled a cannon with an Xbox controller. A mechanic in Tokyo turned a broken-down hovercar into a railgun launcher using an espresso machine. A farmer in Nebraska hit a Dominion walker with a combine harvester and shouted, "For soybeans!" In orbit, Razak lost it. He ordered full orbital strikes. No more tactics. No more pride. He would burn Earth until it was quiet. But Earth had one more card. Jack, leading the charge in a battered but upgraded mech, now armed with a salvaged Dominion cannon and a reinforced American flag for armor, activated the override built into every Juggernaut chassis, a fail-safe designed to channel their internal power into a one-time planetary pulse. A suicide move in normal circumstances. But Jack had found a loophole. The pulse wouldn't destroy the Juggernauts. It would broadcast their memories, every image, every feeling, every bit of their training, directly into the hive engine's feedback loop. And the hive, unable to distinguish data from reality, began choking out emotion. Jack shouted through an open channel. "You want to know what makes Earth strong? It's not the tech. It's not the tactics. It's that we don't know when to quit." The pulse hit. Across the sky, the hive engine convulsed. It absorbed a lifetime of defiance, love, heartbreak, humor, failure, and beer-fueled redemption. It tried to catalog it, measure it, suppress it. It failed. Earth's chaos had become a virus in its core systems. The frequency collapsed. The skies cleared. Dominion systems shut down planet-wide. Razak stared at the silence around him, shaking with fury. His fleet, his generals, his engine, undone by a mechanic in a junkyard suit and a planet that refused to follow the rules. Jack stood on a ridge, helmet under his arm, watching the hive engine spiral toward the ocean in a slow, flaming descent. He didn't cheer. He just said, "Told you. You picked the wrong dirtball." The hive engine hit the ocean like a dying god, sending a wave of steam and shattered water skyward that could be seen from space. The impact sent tremors across the Pacific Rim, and for a moment, Earth held its breath. Then the signal died. No more nightmares. No more glitches in reality. No more quiet static in the back of everyone's mind. Just a deep silence, followed by something the planet hadn't felt in days: relief. It wasn't victory yet, but it was a break in the chaos. And in that silence, Jack Maddox stood still in his battered mech suit, shoulders slumped, as if the weight of the world had been pressing against him this whole time and only now was letting go. The Dominion fleet above Earth had stopped moving. Orbiting warships that once burned with predatory energy now hovered in uncertainty. Without the hive engine's control and sensory grid, they were essentially blind, their coordination shattered. Inside the flagship Dominion Fong, Razak the Ruthless was anything but blind. He was livid, his rage seething through every word as he barked orders at a crew that no longer understood what they were fighting. Earth had somehow turned what should have been a tutorial-level conquest into a psychological horror show. He ordered a ground invasion, one final push. He would crush Earth with the troops he still had and reclaim his reputation by dragging the human known as the Juggernaut back to the Fong in chains. Troop ships descended, armored beasts and Dominion enforcers deployed like locusts onto the ruined cities and deserts below. But Earth was ready now. Not with precision weapons or elegant technology, but with garage-built exosuits, potato launcher turrets, retrofitted museum tanks, and humans who had finally found something to unify behind. They didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like neighbors defending their porch. Engineers rode into battle on forklifts reinforced with steel plates. Grandparents used modified wheelchairs loaded with EMP mines. Teenagers hacked Dominion drones using old gaming headsets and directed them to crash into enemy command vans while blasting anime-themed songs. The world had never seen anything like it, and neither had the Dominion. Jack led the charge with the Juggernauts flanking him, each one now fully reprogrammed with their original memories intact. They moved through city ruins and scorched highways with the purpose of warriors and the chaos of demolition crews. No formation, no standard tactics, just instinct, grit, and sheer stubbornness. The Dominion expected clean warfare. What they got was a planet throwing kitchen sinks, sarcasm, and sheer fury at them. One Dominion squad tried to take a school and was stopped by a marching band armed with sonic rifles hidden inside tubas. Another was overrun by an alliance of bikers, ex-firefighters, and one extremely angry beekeeper who weaponized hives by strapping them to drones. Razak, growing desperate, called for his final weapon. He ordered General Blaine to be brought up from Earth's surface, now that his usefulness had ended. But Blaine had other plans. Surrounded by the very juggernauts he once tried to control, Blaine had attempted to flee during the chaos, only to be cornered in the ruins of a government safehouse. Jack approached him slowly, helmet under one arm, sweat and dirt streaking his face. Blaine tried his old tricks, rationalizations, politics, superiority. Jack just stared. "You betrayed your planet for a seat at someone else's table," Jack said quietly. "Didn't even ask what was on the menu." Blaine snarled. "We needed control. Structure. You think chaos is the answer?" Jack shook his head. "No. But it's how we survived long enough to find one." They didn't execute him. That wasn't the Earth way. Instead, Blaine was handed over to the international court system, which meant the rest of his life would be spent standing in lines, filling out forms, and explaining why he tried to sell out humanity during every layover and security check. A fitting end for a man obsessed with control. With ground resistance collapsing, the Dominion tried to retreat. But Earth had other plans. The newly liberated Juggernauts, aided by hundreds of human-engineered aircraft now running on reclaimed alien tech, launched into the skies. They boarded the remaining warships not with stealth or diplomacy, but with brute-force boarding drills and jet-propelled battering rams. In space, a different kind of war began, one where duct tape and digital chaos met elite galactic precision in a ballet of improbable survival. Jack himself launched toward the Dominion Fang aboard a jerry-rigged shuttle held together by magnetic clamps, bubblegum sealant, and a small thermonuclear reactor mounted where the coffee maker used to be. He punched through the hull with the Juggernauts right behind him, fighting their way through halls of screaming alien elites. The flagship was falling apart, systems glitching, alarms howling in languages Jack didn't understand. He moved with fury but not vengeance. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about ending it. At last, Jack kicked open the doors to the throne room and came face to face with Razak. The war chief stood tall, still wearing his full ceremonial armor, plasma axe in hand. Behind him, stars glittered through the glass wall, Earth below casting its pale blue glow upward. They didn't speak. They just fought. It was not a graceful battle. It was loud, clumsy, full of shattered consoles, ripped wires, and improvised weapons. Jack wielded a length of piping as if it were Excalibur. Razak moved like a storm, slashing and roaring, trying to end it with raw strength. But Jack knew what Razak didn't. Earth wasn't about winning clean. It was about never giving up, no matter how bad it got. So when Razak brought down his axe in a final, screaming arc, Jack caught it with both hands, held it, and headbutted the warlord so hard his helmet cracked in two. Razak fell. Jack stood over him, chest heaving, eyes blazing with exhaustion and fury. "You called us primitive," he said. "But you forgot the most important thing." Razak, bloody and broken, barely whispered, "What?" Jack looked down, deadpan. "We make the best comebacks." Then he opened the external airlock, dragging Razak to the edge. A rescue shuttle latched onto the ship just in time, and Jack tossed the war chief into a containment field. Minutes later, he walked out of the wrecked Dominion Fong, escorted by surviving Juggernauts, onto Earth's upper atmosphere docking ring, where leaders from around the world, and several from other worlds, had gathered. The Galactic Federation finally showed up. Late, confused, and carrying paperwork. A representative approached Jack, blinking through a translation visor. "Earth has demonstrated resilience and unorthodox warfare capability. Would you like a seat on the War Council?" Jack raised an eyebrow, wiped grime off his forehead, and said, "Only if I get to bring my crew." They granted it. Weeks later, Earth was being slowly integrated into the galactic community. New alliances formed. Old enemies reconsidered. Razak, sentenced by the Federation to 200 years of administrative service, now worked at the Galactic DMV. Jack visited him once, sipped coffee, and waited in line just to ask one question. "Still think we're primitive?" Long after the flames died and the skies cleared, Earth settled into the strange, unsettling quiet of a world that had just punched a god in the throat and lived to tell about it. Cities buzzed with a hesitant energy, not of fear, but of disorientation. Humanity had survived what was essentially an intergalactic extermination attempt armed with lawnmowers, rock music, and the angry will of people who didn't like being told they were beneath notice. But the aftermath was not peace. Not yet. Peace had to be earned, and Earth still had questions to answer. Most importantly, what came next? Jack Maddox found himself at the heart of those questions. He hadn't asked for leadership. He'd fought because it was personal. Because someone looked at his planet, his people, and saw garbage. Now those same people were looking at him like a symbol. News anchors couldn't agree on what to call him. Was he a war hero? A vigilante? A war criminal with style? The Galactic Federation labeled him Earth's Combat Representative, a title that sounded suspiciously like guy who punches problems. Jack didn't care. Titles were for people who hadn't earned their scars. He spent most of his days now in a refurbished flight hangar on the edge of Nevada, which had been unofficially rebranded New Earth Command. Technically, it was still just a glorified shed with power cables running through the floor and walls made of reconstituted warship armor, but Jack liked it. It was ugly, solid, and smelled like fuel. Beside the hangar sat his mech, restored, enhanced, and still painted with that ridiculous chicken-wielding dynamite. Every time someone asked if he was going to repaint it, Jack simply pointed at it and said, "That bird won a war." The Juggernauts who survived had become legends in their own right. Rebooted, rededicated, and still slightly insane, they formed Earth's new defensive unit. Not a formal army. More like a roaming problem-solving crew who showed up where the suits couldn't. Each member had their own approach to diplomacy. Some used empathy. Others used fists. One guy brought interpretive dance, which confused alien dignitaries so much they assumed it was an ancient Earth challenge and responded with ritual combat. That ended badly for them. Jack maintained that if it works, it counts as strategy. Meanwhile, Razak the Ruthless had officially been reclassified by the Galactic Federation as Razak the Bureaucratically Indentured. His station was deep inside a government branch so convoluted that even the Federation's AI refused to monitor it without hazard pay. He now spent his days issuing parking permits for hovercraft and attending mandatory conflict resolution workshops hosted by sentient mushrooms. Occasionally, Jack would receive a galactic postcard from someone claiming to have seen Razak arguing with a sentient printer. The image always came with a warning about interoffice patients and a coupon for synthetic coffee. But even as Earth adjusted to its new standing, something began to gnaw at the edges of Jack's instincts. Not fear. Something worse. Familiarity. One afternoon, While calibrating a new EMP cannon made from scrap satellite cores and a blender, Jack noticed something off in the data feed. A pattern. A signal not unlike the one the hive engine used to pulse, except slower, more deliberate. Hidden. He ran it through translation filters, military decryption tools, even fed it to a bored hacker from New Jersey. It didn't crack. That alone made Jack nervous. Then the pattern shifted. It began broadcasting coordinates. Not on Earth, but just beyond the solar system, where no ship had been since the Dominion's defeat. The message included one word, Juggernaut. Jack didn't tell anyone right away. Instead, he prepped his suit, ran a self-diagnostic, and loaded the cockpit with enough supplies for a one-way trip. He told his crew he was going for a test flight. Most of them knew he was lying, but none of them stopped him. They understood what it meant to follow your gut, especially when your gut had been trained to spot trouble before it had a name. He launched at dusk, cutting across the atmosphere with barely a sound. The stars opened before him like an invitation. The signal led him to the edge of a dead zone, space where Dominion tech once operated, now abandoned, drifting in silence. And there, nestled between a broken war satellite and a frozen Dominion beacon, he found it. A ship. Not one he recognized, but it bore the Dominion's bones, angular, cruel, efficient. But it had been changed. Rebuilt. By what, he couldn't tell. The hull bore symbols not in any known database. Jack approached cautiously, weapons online, scanners hot. No life signs. No heat. But the signal was still active. He docked. Entered. And what he found inside made his blood run cold. Rows of mech suits. Not juggernauts. Not exactly. But something like them. Bigger. Sleeker. Too clean. Too precise. Each one pulsed with a faint, steady rhythm, waiting. There were no pilots. No instructions. Just one screen, blinking steadily with a single phrase, Earth was a test. Jack stepped back. The walls around him shimmered faintly. Not metal. Not fully. Some kind of organic compound, reacting to his presence. He touched it and saw flashes, images of Earth's battles, but not from his view. Someone, or something, had been watching. Learning. He turned and sprinted back to his mech, but the ship didn't resist. It let him go. That frightened him more than anything. Back on Earth, Jack returned quietly. He didn't tell anyone what he saw. Not yet. But he began building again. Not out of paranoia. Out of preparation. He reinforced his suit. Upgraded defenses. Trained harder. Started leaving coded notes in the Federation's communication archives. He began contacting old resistance fighters, forming unofficial drills. When asked, he just smiled and said, "Just in case." One night, sitting on the same rooftop where he'd once toasted the end of the war, Jack looked up at the stars and felt it again, that tug. Like the first rumble of a storm rolling in just beyond the horizon. Earth had won a battle. But something out there had taken notes. The war hadn't ended. It had just gone quiet. And Jack Maddox didn't trust quiet. So he raised another drink, looked into the sky, and whispered like a promise, like a dare, like a warning only the stars could hear. Still the wrong dirtball.